Okay, so this is what we're going to do here. You'll have to excuse me. This is what happens when you're sick for almost an entire week. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to bring in a trace. Now I'm not going to go too much on the actual tools, all the different tools that are available to you here. Luthier TN, he's a developer of this software. He made it free, so it's actually donationware. You can donate by clicking on make a donation up in the top right. But basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a trace of a pattern that I have drawn in the past. So whenever you click on add a trace, it opens up a box over to the left side, and it's basically looking for the pattern that you're going to bring in. So this is the pattern that I'm going to be playing with. The opacity gives you the ability to go up and down on the actual pattern dimensions. And the other thing is you have three things: the X and the Y axis. So you move the actual object to the left and to the right, up and down on by moving this one here. You also have the rotation. So the rotation, you can actually give your rotation of 90 degrees, and it will spin it across over to a 90-degree angle. The next thing is going to be the actual DPI. So the further out you are, the smaller that they get. So the closer you get down to zero, the bigger this item gets here. So what I'm going to do here is, I just know from experience and playing around with the software enough that about 560, when you're talking about a full, a regular piece of paper, it's about the right size and the dimensions. So you can do this by going down to 560 in my example, selecting a line, and then dropping a line across two coordinates. So I'm going to go ahead and put it across right here and down below, and it's pretty freaking close, right? It's about 70 millimeters. And I know that from left to right, we're going to have this at 70 millimeters here. So what I'm going to do before I start drawing is I want to go into my actual intersections that I have here. So I can actually cut this off, right? So I can make it bigger. I can have a much bigger pattern, and that way I have trim allowance. But because I'm going to be using a laser printer, I don't need any of the trim allowance right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up this intersection to some sort of point on my grid. Right, so that's going to be the main thing that I'm going to be doing here. So I'm going to lower my opacity, and I'm going to line up to this dot right here. I'm going to line up this intersection. So let's go ahead and go down to tracing and start playing around with the actual positions here to get it to line up. Actually, look, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get it to about right there. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back to tracing, and let's get our point right there. I think that's good enough for me. Okay, there we go. So we have that here. So now what I need is I'm going to select the rectangle, and I'm going to drop from top left to bottom right on the rectangle here, and it looks like we're at 175 by 115. So that's going to be my rectangle here. So this is going to be the outer edge of my wallet. And I'm going to be using a tool that's called beveling. And I'm going to bevel 10 millimeters from top left all the way across the wallet here. So here we go. Now we have our beveled edges, and we're good with that. So double click on that option, Control C, Control V, and that will give you a copy of the back of the wallet. So I'm going to finish that off right there. Next, I need to create this inner rectangle right here. So for this to happen, I know that my wallets are going to be about 70 millimeters from left to right, or the actual pockets. So I'm going to grab a line, and I'm going to grab 70 millimeters from one side, 70 millimeters from the other side right here. Okay, and then I need to have center lines. So a center line, if you click on the center line here and pick 2 points, you have the ability to create center lines from top to bottom, and this is actually going to make sure that everything is going to be symmetrical for you. You also have, I have a 7 millimeter padding. This is where the stitch line is going to go. So I have 7 millimeter padding on here. So you can go to offset, and currently my offset is going to be for 3 millimeters across the stitch line. Actually, no, hold up. I'm going to take it back, and I'm going to go down to marking, and by marking is going to be for 7 millimeters already. So I'm going to select this intersection and go down, and this is going to give me my 7 millimeter line. Offset does the same thing, but offset basically does it across the entire line. So that's why I didn't want to go for the offset option there. So there is something else that I want to show you here now that we're at this location here. You can actually do two things, and I think honestly what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this a little bit bigger here. What I'm going to show you first is going to be, let's go ahead and use the rectangle to show you a cool feature here. I'm going to do my beveling as well. So let's pretend this is a design that I use all the time. So what I can do is select the entire design, right click on it, and I can actually save it. So I'm going to register it as a template, and I'm going to call it corner design always, whatever you want to call it. Click OK. It's already been saved. So now I can delete it if I wanted to. On the right side, I can open the repository, and here's everything that you've saved to the system. So corner design always, add to canvas, and here you go. So now you have the ability to call the design, or to basically bring the design so you can play with it in the future or whatever. I've done this for multiple different things, including a credit card system. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the credit card, add it to the canvas, and now I have a credit card that came in. To rotate the credit card, you're going to press and hold Control, and you're going to scroll up and down on your mouse to basically get it down to 90 degrees here. So what I'm looking for here is spacing around my credit card. I don't know if I'm going to have enough space around the credit card whenever I add my stitching line, and I'm a little concerned about the fact that this is going to be super tight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend this down to about 75 millimeters instead of 70 millimeters. And then that way, whenever my stitch line comes in, I'm going to have enough room around the entire area to give me some sort of like breathing room for the credit card here. So I think I'm going to go for 70 millimeters instead. Okay, so next, you can select this line here, and we're going to talk about a thing that's called symmetry. Symmetry allows you to actually clone. Basically, think of whatever you see up here in the top, it will reflect it based on whatever line you select. So I'm going to select this symmetry line. It's going to turn it pink, and it's basically asking me to select another line so you can have a symmetry. So let's say that I wanted to do this, it'll clone it up to the top. So if I do the same thing again, let's go ahead and do that. And I click on symmetry and I select this line, it'll clone it exactly down to the bottom because this is our center line in the middle, right? So that's what it's going to do here. So the symmetry allows you to have the same line top to bottom, right? That's what symmetry does. What I am going to do is I'm going to set up a rectangle, and I'm going to go ahead and get my rectangle from here to here, 25 to 105, and there we go. So now I have that inner rectangle here. I don't need this. I also don't need this, and I'm not going to use any of my symmetry lines anymore. I think I'm done with those. I can get rid of this section, and I can get rid of this section. The next thing that I need is going to be beveling at 5 millimeters so that I can give myself some sort of radius across the different borders in the middle of my card here. All right, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and select this, Control Copy and Control V, or Control C, Control V, and I'm going to put it down here in the bottom. So now we have to create our pocket cards here. So I know that my pocket cards are going to be right here in the center, so in this line. And what I'm going to do is select another rectangle, and I'm probably going to go from here to here, and that'll give me 85 by 75. Select, and I'm going to put it off on the side here. Okay, now another thing that I want to bring in is a small little nuance of this system is if you look at your lines and you want to anchor it to this corner, there is no magnetic pull towards that corner. It just doesn't do anything. But if you actually grab a dot and you drop the dot somewhere on the grid line, now you have the ability to basically anchor that card to, or like anything that you're looking for, to that dot. See, like now, even if I were to move to the left or to the right, it doesn't do anything, right? So if you do it fast enough, it'll actually unpull it or unanchor it from that area. So That's something that you can do here. Let's go ahead and pretend, actually no, let's go ahead and see what we can do here. I could set up a card similar to this, but I think the one that I like the best is the traditional card that you see on this angle here. So I don't need this up in the top. I can get rid of that. I think what I'm going to do is 10 millimeters on both sides. 10 millimeters on both sides. I need to have a center line, right? So what I'm going to do is select my center line. I'm going to do this. And I'm probably going to go 10 millimeters down into the bottom. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to select my Bezier curve. I'm going to go 10 millimeters in, bottom by 10, right at 10. Okay. I'm going to select my center line, or my line here. Symmetry, go to the right. And then I'm going to go ahead and select these 2 points and connect them together. And there we go. I think that's what I'm going to be doing. I want that to be here. Instead of this wave, I'm going to do this for my wallet here. Okay, so let's go ahead and Control V, Control Copy, Control V. So I'm going to need 2 of these, one for the left pocket and one for the right pocket. The next thing that I need to do is set up my T pocket. So the T pocket here, it's going to be 15 millimeters from top to bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this down to 15 millimeters. If you select this line, it tells you on the right side, this is 15 millimeters. So let's go ahead and drag those 2. Okay, I'm going to select this, Control V, Control Copy, and Control C, Control V. And there we go, that's my line. The next thing that I need is to get this to 35 millimeters. I'm going to go down to the middle here. I know this is 25 just because I know each one of these boxes is now 5 millimeters. So there is 30, there's 35, and I can confirm it by looking into this bottom section, and that tells me that this is 35. Now the problem that we have here is that if you were to look at it, this is only 5 millimeters from the right, and this one right here is 2, right? So this is going to be 10 millimeters from the right, actually even more than that. So this is actually going to be, let's see here, 5, 10, 15. So what I need to do is get this here, just like that. So now I select my line, select this bottom line to this top line, and there we go. So now I can get rid of this, and I can get my left pocket and my right pocket, and there we go. So those are going to be the 2 things that I need here. So I'm going to start going in and selecting each one of these things here, and I'm going to right click and click on Group Selected Items. So that's going to be, all of these are going to be my pockets that are going to be selected here. So let's go ahead and move all of these over to the right side. These are done. Okay, I don't need this dot. These right here are also going to be grouped and selected. Now the next thing that I need to do is draw out this Western style pocket cover. This is how they look like, right? So usually, like, you'll see it in cowboy boots, or you see it at the edge of the wallets, or some sort of, like, you know, Western thing. It's almost like a little design that they put on the side. So what I'm going to do is get rid of this in the middle, and I think we could have this design up here on the top, right? So we could have it like here on a corner, or we could have something that looks like this right on the middle, right? Like something that looks like this right on the middle here. I think that's something else that we can do. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to draw out this design that you see here, hopefully. So I'm going to speed it up a little bit, but I'm going to draw out to 35, give myself a little rectangle here, and then I'm going to select a different layer. By the way, if you want to change the color of layers, or if you want to hide layers, you can double click on a layer and it hides everything for you. So I'm going to go ahead and do 35. And then I'm going to select another layer. That's going to be number 7. And I'm going to put it right here. So that's going to be the middle point for my layer. So I'm going to start doing this pattern here. Let's see how I can do this pattern. So I'm gonna do something like this, something like that, and I'll speed it up for you so that you're not waiting for me to draft this up here. Okay, let's pretend that this is going to be my design here. So again, I can press Control and I can scroll up and down until I rotate it to the 90-degree angles that I'm looking for. And I think this can actually work here. I'm going to put it right in the middle. So again, I'm going to select my center line, go ahead and create a center line down the middle. So center line from one side to the other. And now I can drag this and put it right here. Now here is another thing that you can do. You can actually select this, press Control Shift, and you can scroll up or backwards, and it'll actually make this bigger for you. So I think what I'm going to do is change the color to blue, and I'm going to go ahead and start playing around with this until I get a design that actually works for what I'm looking for. Alright, so again, let me speed it up and I will be right back as I come up with some sort of like different style of design that works for this. Okay, and this is what I ended up with. I think this can work. I think this can actually work for what I'm looking for. So this will be the design that I'm gonna need. So let's go with this one here. Okay, so I don't need the back side anymore. So all of this can actually go away. And I actually don't need this dot right here. That can also go away. And I'm gonna go back to tracing and I'm gonna hide the opacity. And now I can start piecing things together here. Basically, like, this is going to go up in the top. This is going to be the back wallet. So this will go there in the top. I have to cut around the edges. This is going to be the first pocket. This will be the second pocket that will live here. The same thing is going to happen to the other side. And print it out here in a second. So that's going to be the other pocket. And the one that's going to go right there. So there we go. So that's where everything is going to fit. So I'm going to go ahead and press Ctrl Z and get this ready for print. So the way to print it are two things. All right, so let's go ahead and start going up to the top here. I'm going to go ahead and deselect everything that you see here, right? I'm going to change this to green to make sure that everything is identical. Oops, I need to select this. I'm sorry. There we go. So now everything is identical. You can also press the letter G and it hides the grids, so you're able to see the pattern a little bit better. Okay, so that's another thing that you can do here. So let's go ahead and get this thing ready for print. So the print option is going to be on the right side if you want to print it. If you want to save it as, you can go to File and then Export as an SVG file. Go ahead and click on Export. It's going to ask you to save it somewhere and save it, and you're done. Now you can bring in that exported SVG file onto Photoshop or onto your laser printer, whatever you're doing to get it printed, you can do that. So if you want to do paper print, that's the other thing that you can do here. So you can actually click on the print button, and then you're going to go ahead and start off by selecting OK. This is the first thing that you're going to be doing here. This box opens up whenever you're ready for that. Click on print. It's going to give you a thing on the side, like make sure that everything is correct, blah, 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 whatever. Read it and go through with it. And this right here says print selected shapes only, or you can have the entire print paperwork out. This is what you can print on, this blue mark, right? So here's what you need to do in order to get this thing ready to print. There are a couple of things inside of the repository. So if you open the repository and then go down to like an A4 portrait, for example, add it to the canvas, it'll actually give you the piece of paper that's going to be for the A4 portrait. So anything that you select, you can actually put it in here to make sure that it's going to be the right dimensions. right? So this particular file here is not going to work for me. So what I'm going to do is just drag these things, put them in here, and make sure they actually fit. So I'm going to pretend that I took the time to get everything together and everything is working fine here, right? So I can get rid of this piece of paper, and I'm going to select these 3 copies here. I'm going to go over to print, click OK, go to print. It'll give you that, make sure that everything is working fine, and then only print the selected items, and then go ahead and put your piece of paper up in the top right, click on print, and it's going to print out everything inside of this box. Right, again, I'm not going to do that just because I'm not going to print it out at the moment, since it's not really a project that I'm working on. It's just something that I was using to show you how this works. But I do want to show you one last thing that I really didn't show you earlier. Check this out, and we talked a little bit about offset a little bit. You can, I'm going to deselect this and ungroup it by selecting and clicking on ungroup. I'm going to go to offset 3 millimeters. I'm going to bring this in just like that. All of these corner edges are going to be brought in. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this extra one that I brought in. I'm going to select this outer layer, and I'm going to go to stitching, select one of your stitching tools. I'm going to use the diamond 4mm tool, and then I'm going to select that inner line that I just offsetted. And there you go. So now you have the ability to put in your stitching lines across the entire tool. The other thing too is, like, if you have an offset of the inner lines as well, something like this, you can do stitching, but you have to select the starting point and the ending point. You can't just randomly select one of the lines here. You can select lines whenever they have a full loop, right? So they go in a full circle. As an example, this one right here goes in a full circle, so you can select it. This one, however, does not. So you have to start at the top, scroll down to the bottom, and then there is your stitching line right here, and that's how you stitch them. So again, if you wanted to print it out like that, that's cool. You can select the whole thing and click on delete. I'm not going to do that just because I usually do machine stitching or laser cutting and machine stitching. I mean, I have a couple different ways of doing it. But what I am going to do is I'm going to show you how I prepare these things, and I bring them in to use them for my clients, so that they actually know how this is actually going to look like. So let me go ahead and start getting the colors prepared for you, and then I'll show you how this works. So let's go to the next section here for Photoshop, and then show you how I go through with the actual process. Now, whenever we bring everything into Photoshop, we import in the SVG file. You can barely see it here, so let me go ahead and add another layer and put in some white background in the background. So now you're able to see where the file is here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to start bringing in all the different leathers that we're going to be making this wallet out of. So I already have all the leathers pre-scanned. These are the leathers that I play with the most, or that I usually make things out of. So what I'm going to do is bring in the leather styles and show you kind of like how they're splitting up. I'm going to use 3 different types. It's going to be the Almo, Natural, and the waxy color here. So this is not a Photoshop tutorial, so all I'm doing is selecting the actual SVG part here, and I'm trying to cut pieces of it so that I can actually reconstruct the wallet later. So this is the pattern whenever you cut everything out in terms of the wallet. And what I'm going to be doing here is just adding different effects to give us like drop shadow effects, and actually making the wallet look like it's an actual wallet in 3D. So if you play around with Photoshop, you're able to kind of like mimic how the wallet is going to look like. I send this off to a client first, so they can actually tell me whether or not they want they want me to proceed with the actual design or the project. I have multiple of these different templates. I can even show you how to create your own. But basically, I go through the whole process, everything from selecting the leather styles to putting in the stitch lines, and trying to show the client how the product is going to look like at the end of it. I don't like to play around with the actual creating a wallet first and then hoping for the best. So I'm hoping that maybe by doing something like this, the client is going to be able to understand what they're getting themselves into, and then hopefully I can replicate this to the best of my ability. In this particular example, I don't want the actual stitch line to come through. So what I'm going to do is try to find a way to hide it. And to hide it, you can actually use multiple different styles of leather, or you can actually bring in some sort of a handkerchief to actually hide the back end of it. So what I can do is make a couple of different versions of this, including our logo. I'll bring in the logo, make sure that everything is set up in the right angle. If the client wants to use their own logo, this is where we can engrave their logo, we can engrave their name, whatever it is that they're looking for. At the end of the day, whenever the client is looking for a bespoke product, I try to make sure that everything actually fits what they need. So if I wanted to, or if I was going to create the actual wallet, this is ultimately how the wallet is going to look like by the time that it's all said and done. Again, I don't want to take the time to actually build it because nobody actually placed an order for this, but I did want to show you that this is how you can use Leathercad and Photoshop to basically create the wallet that your client is going to be looking for. Hopefully it helps. Best of luck. Get to making.